Hi, I'm David Puckett, and I'm the curator of collections here at the Frontier Culture Museum. I'm here with museum volunteer George Lott, who has been featured previously on Wood and Shop tours. And we are looking at the Adam Kersh cabinet making collection. And Adam Kersh was a mid to late 19th century cabinet maker here in Augusta County, Virginia. And in 1985, the museum acquired what was remaining of the contents of his shop.
The location of the shop was in what is now Rockingham County.
It's Rockingham.
Was Augusta County then, in an area known as Wise Hollow.
That's right.
Off of Airport Road in Bridgewater, Virginia. So that's the location. There was a farm complex there, farmhouse, cabinet maker's shop. There was also a blacksmith shop that was added a bit later. My name's George Lott, and I'm a volunteer here, primarily as a furniture maker doing reproductions for the various house sites. I had the good fortune back in 1986 of rediscovering, if you will, the Adam Kersh cabinet maker's shop, which is located in Wise Hollow, which was then Augusta County. And one thing led to the other. Found the shop and then started looking for some documentation of the shop and its shopkeeper. And one of the good fortunes that we had was to locate an inventory of and the actual sale of his personal property that occurred shortly after his death in 1905. And by the way, he was 77 at the time of his death. He was a bachelor. He lived principally with his brother, George Pfeiffer Kersh, for all the years of his life. Anyway, this is a fairly complete listing of tools and personal goods, and I was astounded at the number of tools that he had acquired over the years that he was working. In the 1850 census, Kersh appears as a farmer. There's evidence, I think, that he was probably doing cabinet working before that time, but maybe on a part-time basis. But by 1860, he's clearly identified as a cabinet maker. And after the Civil War, in which he was a participant, he is showing up as a cabinet maker, chair maker, and that seems to be a very popular phase of his work life. Anyway, here's the inventory, and it's rather complete. The other thing I was able to stumble upon were a whole series of letters that were written back and forth during the Civil War. Just briefly, Kersh was a private in the Confederacy, was with the 52nd Regiment, F Company as I recall. Okay, what we're looking at here is a Germanic style workbench, one of two that came out of the Kersh shop. And you'll notice it has the canted leg. It has the sliding piece in the center for supporting boards for edge joining. And unfortunately, it is upside down. We apologize for that, but you can see the various stops and so forth that are coming through the bottom of the piece. One of the more intriguing aspects of the Adam Kersh shop is the fact that he was either making and or repairing fiddles. He was a well-known fiddle player in the area, and that's well documented in a letter. Just read a portion of it. He's coming back from furlough and rejoining his comrades in F Company. And after, reintroductions from his furlough, they said, have you got your fiddle along? I told them that I had to get it right out and commence playing right off. We have a stag dance in one of our cabins every night, which is kind of an interesting aspect of military life in the Civil War. But anyway, you can see that here's a form for forming the ribs of a fiddle, and they seem to marry up rather nicely with this piece here. Whether this was a repair job or one that never came to fruition, I'm not sure. But the other intriguing thing we found, several pieces of what appear to be scrap wood that have notations about chair making on it, but also musical script. We haven't played this yet, but that's certainly one of the things we have to do in the future, to get some idea of whether or not this is an original composition or one that he is copying. One of the fascinating aspects of the shop was the number of tools and implements dedicated to his chair making. Here we actually see a Kersh chair. It certainly has remnants of both green and red paint. Many of his chairs were stenciled, and we found literally a portfolio of stencils. This being one of those. It's pretty obvious that he used this heavier grade material to trace around for the purposes of replicating it. We also have here what appears to be the back of a child's high chair. This is an empty can of linseed oil. It's a sheet metal underneath wood. Here's a paint grinder, and if you can see quite distinctly a bright orange paint that was apparently very popular. There are also a number of bags of paint pigments and brushes, discarded brushes with paint on them, and this one interesting barrel that contained either lead or pigment that came from a manufacturer in Baltimore of paints, oils, varnishes, etc. Okay, let me just show you a few of the tools that came out of the shop. In spite of the fact that it was a major auction and many of them were sold at that time, you do get some perspective of his work. Here are a number of lathe tools, and most of these appear to be 19th century English, Butcher and Addison. We have some hand planes, and you'll notice he has a transitional metal plane as well as what I believe are Allburns. Seem to have an affection for Allburn style planes. Here's a rather large screwdriver, and by all appearances it looks as if it was used to open a paint can, which is one of those no-nos by today standards. Speaking to the variety of the activity of the shop, this is obviously a Cooper's tool, a Crow's, I believe it's referred to. You see the teeth in the metal there. Being a chair maker and doing some rather fancy scroll type work, of course you would have needed a frame saw. And although this is a fairly large tooth one, it was probably used to cut veneer. We have up here something utilitarian, and that would be a saw vise. This was a saw that did come from the house sale, the Kersh, and in all probability was owned by Adam, and even has a telltale repair in walnut on what appears to be an apple handle. Here's a very interesting item that is obviously a artifact, if you will, from his days as a soldier. Kersh fought in most of the major battles of the Civil War. He was at Gettysburg, he was at Chancellorsville and Fredericksburg. Stayed in the war until its conclusion, although there was a brief period during which he was a deserter, and family tradition has it that he hid out in the attic of his shop. He did eventually go back, and our speculation is that this Union officer belt buckle was probably a trophy from one of the battles. Kersh was wounded at the Battle of Bethesda Church, but every indication is that he recovered. He literally worked up until the time of his death. And one of the ironies of that is that when I found the shop in '86 and we entered the room, above the lathe, there was hanging his vest, and we still have that vest. Continuing on, probably the most impressive plane that comes from the Kersh collection is this Spears plane, a Scottish infill plane. I believe that's rosewood. It's bearing Ward iron, and it appears in the inventory as a single plane selling for something close to $2. Of course, there are a variety of hatchets and hammers and mallets and various and sundry other kinds of things. One of the things we found in absolute abundance, and you can understand that back in 1905 there probably wasn't a whole lot of interest in securing the templates of a cabinet maker who had died. So the ceiling was literally filled with a variety of templates and partially worked pieces of furniture. And here are just a sampling of some of those. Some are rather decorative, could have been for chair backs, could have been used as decorative pieces on the backs of case pieces or beds. I believe these are actually, instead of templates, probably pieces that were scheduled to be worked into the Finnish rocking chairs. These are, in all probability, rockers. You'll notice a variety of other things. A testament to his bowl making is this hand adze. We have the good fortune of having Kersh's lathe at this point unassembled, but you can get some idea of the size of it. These are 9 to 10 foot rails. For perspective purposes, let me put my hand on here. These are the two posts that supported those rails. Below here we see the flywheel, which is bound in a very heavy piece of blacksmith iron. You see the drive mechanism. Over there, there are a number of pieces that are probably tool supports, tool rest. This was a supporting piece for the flywheel. In the back we have the pitman, the hooked piece, and the long part of the treadle. And we actually fortunate enough to have the belt that made this operation run. And it gives me an opportunity to just also mention in passing that these folks were also doing leather work. Now, whether Adam was doing it or his brother George is unknown, but there was a one-page inventory of leather goods. There was a leather maker's vise and other tools associated with that trade. Here, hopefully, is something your subscribers might be able to help us identify. It's clearly a lathe object, a puppet of some kind. This obviously fit over the bed, and this wedge was a tension wedge to hold it in place. Not sure about how this piece fits with it, but it was found with it. There's a wedge here. I thought at first glance that it was a stabilizing type of tool. Remember, he's doing a lot of chair parts, and some of the smaller pieces may have required some kind of tensioning to keep the thing from whipping on him. Make no mistake about it, Kersh was interested in keeping up with the times and staying competitive with local small factory furniture and chair making, and this is one of those tools that would have kept him in a competitive mode. It's a treadle-driven sharpening device made in Waupaca, Wisconsin, USA. As we move over here, we see a lot of different things. Now, here's literally a piece of scrap wood. So why would we save that? Well, for the simple reason that it has information on it. It has calculations. It in and of itself is an artifact. Here are two pieces that appear to be architectural pieces, rosettes, if you will, to fit in the upper corners of a door doorway support. One of the things that we did after locating the shop was to involve James Madison University in an archaeological survey of the premises. I had the good fortune to be working in a 3x3 quad in the shop. And by the way, the sawdust on the floor was approaching about 24 inches. It's miraculous that the shop hadn't burned down, because right in the middle of the shop was a Dixie wood stove, and yet the place was intact. Anyway, as I'm digging through that material on the floor, this is a sharpening stone that I found, located in the sawdust. An item that points to the scope of the work that Alexander was doing is this gun stock, unfinished, in walnut. It looks as if it's a figured walnut. He certainly was capable of doing complex molding work. This happens to be an oak. Don't know whether this was a purchased item or a shop-made item, but it obviously looks like a spoke-shaped type of device that he's using. One of the intriguing things were the abundance of this device. And again, I reach out to your subscribers to help us identify it. We found items like this in a variety of sizes and in quantities. I'm guessing anywhere from 50 to 75 of these. My first inclination is to call them some kind of a wood clamp, and I guess they could have been used that way, but if you have some other ideas on it, we would be interested in hearing them. Here's another, what I'll refer to as a Watsit. They have absolutely no idea how it was used. It's a piece of leather that's been draped over it and then pulled through a hole in both directions, and a kind of a torque turn handle on here. This is a piece, obviously, the front of a drawer. It still has a little, I assume, brass pull on it. You can see the rabbit, I'm sorry, in here for receiving the drawer bottom. But I think of interest to the viewers here would be the dovetail work that Kersh was doing. This is fairly small, delicate work. What you're viewing here are some blacksmithing tools. There was a complete blacksmith shop located adjacent to the Kersh cabinet shop. We do feel, however, that it was a later addition to the site.
If you're interested in learning traditional woodworking with hand tools, visit my website at woodandshop.com, where you can find free video tutorials, buying guides, and reviews. Make sure you subscribe to my regular blog posts, and also check out my 10 steps for getting started. Enjoy!